So without further ado, Wiz, a very warm welcome to you for joining us today and making time to talk to us and share some of your expertise. I know that we've got quite a lot to fit into this session, and certainly it's content that must resonate with many of the women in our community, because we've had a phenomenal response to this. So thank you so much. And I know that you have prepared some great takeaways and bullet points for us for afterwards. So for anyone who does want to have a follow-up with Wiz afterwards and have a chat, as I'm sure you're going to see as we go along, she has incredible experience and has worked with some phenomenal brands. So touching on that point, Wiz, would you be able to share with us some sort of, highlights of your journey, I guess, and how you've got to where you are now doing the kind of work that you're doing?
Yes, of course. Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and thanks for all of you joining. What a great turnout. So yeah, I'm Wiz. I have a brand and retail strategy agency called WIZZ&CO, and we work with global retailers, global brands, but also work with emerging brands and helping them scale to be established. So really about disrupting the market. How do you get stand out and how do you scale? Because it's a big job building a brand. There's lots of different facets to it, and I'm always asked, what's the magic formula? I wish there was one. I could sell that for millions if I knew the answer to that, but there's lots of different elements, and we'll be talking about a bit of that today. I suppose a bit about me and my background. I spent 12 years working at Selfridges, which is one of the most incredible stores and places to work in the world. I started in buying in fashion as an admin, and I worked my way up. I worked in menswear, beauty. I was accessories buyer for handbags and jewelry, I think every girl's dream. And then I went on to head up beauty buying team. So worked across lots of different categories and absolutely loved it. After that, I went to work for brands. So I worked for Cowshed and Soho Home, where I was sales director. So I then worked with retailers and was kind of launching Soho Home interiors at the time into lots of big retailers. And then I really missed working with lots of different brands. I think the retail industry is so innovative. It's moving at such a pace. There's so many new brands popping up. And I really wanted to help more brands to be able to scale. Or if it's the global brands, often helping them reposition because they are losing market share to a lot of the new brands that are coming along.
I have to unmute myself now and remember.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you've worked with such a broad spectrum of product categories.
Yes.
What makes a brand sought after? I mean, regardless of whether it's a beauty product or even a service. I mean, how do we position ourselves as having products and services that are really sought after?
I think it's really, how do you get talked about? How do you really build your presence in the market? And how do you get people talking about your brand to their friends? Because I think that's the ultimate kudos. And you hear people a lot talking about brand loyalty, but actually you want to create brand advocates where people are talking about you behind your back, because essentially that's free PR. And I think that's what really makes a brand stand out. So I suppose it's really excelling in the customer experience. So people want to talk about your brand.
And is that, I know, because we touched on this when we had our preliminary chat before this, is that kind of thing where suddenly you just keep noticing a brand or hearing about it? And,
yeah.
Every time it's kind of like you're seeing it on Instagram, you're hearing about it from your friends, it's popping up in emails. And I know obviously a lot of that's got to do with digital marketing. But does that really pay into making a brand desirable and getting people creating a buzz about you outside of what you're doing for your brand yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and digital marketing is one thing, and I think the customer's savvy, they know what digital marketing is. They see a sponsored ad, and if it keeps popping up, I think it's a great reminder for people that are brands there. But actually, it's what other validation can you get for your brand? So what are the other external partnerships that you can get? So are journalists talking about you? Are you in Vogue? Are you in, I mean, the Daily Mail actually gives a huge reach to people. It's not everyone's always a fan of that publication, but actually from a reach point of view, if you get featured there, that can have a huge impact on your brand. But are you in all the glossies? Do you have bloggers talking about you? What are your retail partnerships? because actually retail partnerships can really give validation to a brand, because customers trust retailers to be picking the best products. And if they see your brand next to some of the big guys, this can really give kudos and help build trust as well. So I think it's more than just digital advertising. Of course, that is a great channel to then, I suppose, then pop up again in front of customers. But actually, customers need to see your brand multiple times in multiple places before it resonates. And I see this as a big frustration with brands when they're scaling, is they might hire a PR agency and they do get featured in Vogue or the Evening Standard, which is absolutely amazing. And then they're really disappointed that they haven't seen a huge surge in sales. And the reason is somebody has seen this product once. And I'd really encourage you to think about the last thing you bought and how many times you've potentially seen that product, Googled it, talked about it to a friend, and really think about how many times you'd seen that brand or product before you actually purchased it. And you probably can think about 2 or 3 times, but actually there would have been more times as well, which you would have noticed that, but subliminally, and you won't necessarily remembered that. So I often refer to this marketing rule of 7, and I know there's a lot of people on here that have come to my masterclasses before and they've heard me bang on about this, but I think it's just a really good way to think about what are all the different elements that you can be showing your brand to the customer, and where can they discover you?
And I mean, one of the things that I was just thinking about when you were saying that is from a budget perspective, then, do you have any guidance around where people should be putting their marketing spend in order to really drive that validation? Because when you're bootstrapping, and particularly, you know, for startups, that's a challenge, you know, the marketing spend, if you even have any. So where would you recommend that brands really think about putting any budget that they have?
Again, it's not a one size fits all. I think it's what can you do in the short term, and also kind of for long-term planning. It's building a community, it's building a social media presence, and I think really getting your story out there, your point of difference. How are you serving the customer? What are you doing differently? And why do they need to buy your product? Which of course you can start to do organically through social media. That's getting much harder to scale though, and harder to get cut through, because obviously all these big platforms want you to advertise. But you can start doing some stuff with digital marketing. Make sure you're ranking Google as well. Work on some kind of basic SEO on your website as well. I think is a really good investment, and something that a lot of brands don't do early on. A lot of the times I will Google a brand and they might not necessarily rank. So I think it's really important to start focusing on that and create content where people can discover you that way. And then think about your long-term partnerships with retailers. It takes time to launch with retailers. It can be expensive, but actually it will give you global positioning. It helps you access millions of customers overnight. So start doing a bit every week to move yourself closer towards that goal, and really start refining your approach, because doing your research is absolutely crucial to your success. So yeah, it's about doing elements at small elements at a time, and also really think about the customers that you do have. I think so many people are obsessed with trying to get new customers, grow their social media following, and really starting to try and get new customers all the time. But actually, once you've got a few customers, how can you nurture them, and how can you encourage them to be sharing information about your brand to their friends? Because this is a really valuable way to extend your reach, and it has a much higher return on your investment to be able to nurture these people. And it's an area a lot of people, I suppose, forget, because they're trying to get new business all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And new business is far more expensive to acquire than the existing customers. It's that whole bird in the hand principle, isn't it? Thinking about how because your customers naturally become ambassadors for you if they've had a positive experience. And that's the cheapest way to acquire new customers, through their referrals. So yeah, I couldn't agree more, particularly the consulting work I do as well around brands. It's amazing how many people miss a beat on really looking after their existing customers. And so, okay, so in terms of sort of disruptive brands, what are they really doing differently? What's that real point of difference for those that are are making it and being really successful, particularly in the current environment, which is obviously, as we all know, a very, very challenging time for business and retail.
They're being quite bold with their communication and their identity. They're not as scared to, I suppose, put people off as well as attract people as well. And I think a lot of times people want to be safe and they want to attract lots of people. But actually, there's millions and millions of people in the world. And actually, if you start to niche down a bit and really have a tone of voice and an identity, I think that can really help you, I suppose, start to stand out. I think that's really important to think about. So what is your unique selling points? What is your point of difference? And how do you keep, I suppose, carving out a niche in the area that your product is in? Because actually, I think new brands are popping up all the time. And kind of when you set out to start your business, you will have done this work about why you created your brand and what your point of difference is and what your messaging is. But you need to constantly be reviewing that. Do that every 6 months as a minimum. And when I start working with brands, it's something that we always do, because actually they've kind of, it's the biggest thing I hear brands when I ask them what they do and what's their difference. People stumble over it. They never quite can articulate it properly, which means that they're not quite happy with it either. So it's really about getting something that I suppose flows off the tongue for them, that they know they're confident with and that they can really start to shout about. Because ultimately then customers will understand what the brand is about and whether it's right for them.
Yeah. And I think it's also asking, because I know this is something we do in our masterminds, is using one another as a sounding board and saying, you know, can you have a look at my website? Can you have a look at my social accounts? What does it say to you about what we do and what we stand for? And making sure that you're getting different opinions and really honest feedback, because a lot of the time we may have an idea or we may think we know what we're saying, but it's coming across differently to others.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and it's okay for it to evolve as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and make sure that it's resonating with your audience. And so in terms of kind of making sure that you've got a niche, do you have a recommendation around how people can be sure that they've carved out something really special? I mean, for example, I know you've done a lot of work in the beauty industry and in home. Those are all quite cluttered marketplaces. You know, there seem to be new beauty brands launching all the time. How do you make sure that you're doing something different or special?
I think it's a really hard one to answer, because there are so many brands out there. But it is, looking at what's going on around you, but not getting too obsessed with it either, because you don't want to suddenly not be spending time on your brand and looking at what everyone else is doing. But I think also I always find it really inspiring to look at other product categories and see what other people are doing. So who's disrupting a different industry? So look at cars, look at Tesla. What are they doing differently? Was it Tesla? I always say that wrong. And they're talking about batteries. They're not talking about necessarily about the car. They're talking about a product category in a different way. So look at around you, and if you're not in beauty, look at what beauty's doing. I think beauty is one of the most fast-paced industries, because there are so many brands popping up all the time, and it's really driven by marketing. So look at beauty if you're not in beauty. If you're in beauty, look at fashion. Look at what Supreme are doing, for example. They're constantly innovating and I suppose creating new collaborations and concepts. So yeah, have a look at other areas for inspiration, which can often be easier because you can think about how you can apply what they're doing to your business, rather than looking at something that's similar, which then kind of might turn into I don't want to copy them thought process.
Okay, brilliant. And I mean, you mentioned Supreme, but I know that you've had firsthand experience of working with some amazing brands like Charlotte Tilbury.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about kind of what her point of difference was, and you know how you saw that go from, because obviously we all know of it as a really big brand now, but you worked with her when it wasn't known at all. So what were the sort of key points of difference in that case?
I mean, the key point for her was she made everybody wanted a smoky eye. I mean, the rise of influencers and social media was going through the roof, and everybody could do a smoky eye online and everyone looked amazing. But she really understood that the everyday woman couldn't necessarily do that. So she really simplified glamorous makeup for the masses. So she launched with the concept, which was 10 looks, the same woman, and this is how you get these different looks, and this is how you can transform how you look, but also how you feel. So she really connected with customers through that, I suppose, emotional connection, but then also really simplified makeup for a lot of people. And she was also very clever because she created 10 looks, but to buy the look, you had to buy 10 products, which was amazing. So people were spending £200 at a time, whereas a lot of people were going to a beauty counter and they'd buy an eyeshadow and a lipstick and it was 50 quid. So all of a sudden she was having these huge sales as well, which really helped.
There we go. We got you back.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. Well, and that goes to really understanding your audience and the problem that you're solving. You know, because I think many brands don't address that. Are you still with us, Wiz?
Yeah.
There you go. Is really thinking about the problem that you solve for your customers and understanding what it is that they really want and need, and how you can keep satisfying that need or giving them things then that they didn't know they needed as a follow-on to that, which is that, you know, 10 product concept. Yeah. Suddenly one of those products is probably going to be that product that you now can't live without.
Yeah, absolutely.
That you buy on an ongoing basis. And I know that you've also worked with Face Gym, who we've had Inga speak at one of our events as well. It's a phenomenal brand. I'm not sure if everyone in the room knows about it, but they, you know, can you tell us a little bit about their point of difference and I know that they've also had an interesting pivot now, so perhaps you can follow on with that.
Yeah, I mean, Inga's absolutely amazing. I love her. She's crazy, but that makes her and what she does brilliant. Her energy is just infectious. She's fantastic. But when I first met her, actually, we had a meeting and her face was black and blue. It was completely bruised. She looked like she'd been severely beaten up. It was terrible. But actually, she was writing undercover for the Financial Times as spa junkie for their weekend feature, and she was going around the world traveling all the newest facials, and she'd had a vampire facial and they'd re-injected the plasma or whatever they do too far under her epidermis, so it meant that she had all of these bruises all over her face. So she's had a great story for launching this concept, because she said, I've tried everything and I think the best thing is facial massage. Everyone is obsessed with going to the gym and what their bodies look like, but we've got something like 63 muscles in the face, and what are we doing about it? So she wanted to also create something that was androgynous as well. So she came up with Face Gym, and she kind of came when I was at Selfridges with this idea on paper with this black and blue face, and she's like, this is what I want to do. And I was like, okay, this sounds amazing, let's try it. So yeah, she created a pop-up. We kind of gave her a big space on the ground floor for 6 weeks. She kind of showed us the renderings along the way, and kind of we advised on what she should be doing. I mean, I think she learned a huge amount along that journey. She'd obviously never managed people, which I think is one of the hardest things, certainly in the service industry. And yeah, she's scaled an amazing business with lots of investment. She's international. She's got sites in New York, and I'm not sure where else now. So yeah, she's done a great job. But actually, she's of course had a challenge with lockdowns, and there's been service industry. It's kind of face to face, literally one-on-one treatments. But she's actually done a great pivot to digital, where she's created one-to-one, I suppose, what she's called training sessions, as you would with a personal trainer for your body. And she has done one-to-one appointments with her therapists and with customers, where they're teaching them how to do all of this facial massage themselves. And it's a face workout over Zoom. So she's really kept that customer engagement up. I'm sure, obviously, still losing revenue because she has a huge amount of amazing add-on services, whether it's kind of the oxygen facial, which I love personally, which kind of blasts oxygen into your face to rehydrate you, to everything from laser on top. But she's really kept that customer engagement and those appointments going. So it's been a great, I've really admired her pivot.
Yeah, well, and that's a question, I guess, around, because obviously a big part of your expertise that is around guiding brands who want retail exposure and who want to work with retailers.
Yeah.
What advice would you give brands that have done that? So they've kind of gone through the process and they have retail exposure, but now have found themselves in this really challenging time. I mean, is there anything specifically you would tell them to do first or think about first when they're trying to keep going?
Yeah. I mean, I do advise a lot of people on retail partnerships, but actually it's more about, what are they missing? Why aren't they standing out? And a lot of people come to me when they've kind of lost momentum. They're really thinking, I need to scale quicker. Like, what am I doing wrong? And I often work with brands and kind of, I do a bit of a brand audit with them. I will look at all their customer facing channels, like, what are the customers seeing? What is your strategy? Where are you focusing your time? And I think it's then that we can kind of come up with a plan of what they need to focus on for the next 6 months and long term as well, because retail partnerships is just one element of it. And it's great to be in some key retailers, but you need to then be using that to leverage your direct to consumer channels as well, because that's a massive opportunity to scale more profitably if people are coming to you directly. So yeah, what I would encourage people to do is really look at the customer journey. So how does a customer discover you? Where do they discover you? Then when they land on your website or they see you in a retailer, what do they discover about your brand, and how can they kind of find a lot more information? Again, what happens when they Google you? Because you see so many people in shops now. Like, I was remember being in Liberty and somebody was like Googling on their phone the product and looking at the product at the same time, and like literally looking at them side by side. So what content do you have available online? And often lots of people don't have enough. So make sure it's really educational, because people want to go into lots of level of detail sometimes before they purchase something. And then think about what's that purchase process. Do you have some great email marketing? How is your delivery proposition? You need to be really competing with the retailers that you are stocked in. People have high expectations now on delivery. Now we kind of can do one-click Amazon. So really invest in what that experience is. And then thinking about how you're nurturing your customers, how you're building loyalty, how you'll continue to connect and create a community, and then how you can encourage them to talk about your brand to their friends.
On being purpose-led, and I mean, what is your advice around a brand that may be reluctant to be sharing their founder story or their personal story? Because it seems that over the last few years, that's become more and more important to have an actual person that customers and the community can identify with.
Yeah.
So, what do you do if you work with a brand where the founder really doesn't want to be visible, be the face of the brand?
It's,
I mean, they just need to
they just need to do it. It's hard. I've been there. This time last year I hadn't done any video content online, and I was so nervous about doing it. My first video I was kind of like hunched up and my head was down, I spoke quietly, and now like I can do it. But yeah, you still get nervous, but you've got to take the small steps to get there. And I see lots of brands who are worried about their budget. They think, oh, I can't work with that influencer, I can't afford it, it's not fair. And forget about influencers. You are your biggest asset. You are your influencer. The whole influencer world, people aren't trusting them anymore. And I mean, it's been quite interesting, this whole lockdown, where these influencers are traveling to Dubai to go on holiday and be by a pool and go, wow, look at me. I mean, it's just pissing people off right now, quite frankly, because other people are just sat at home in their pajamas and can't go out. So people are losing trust with influencers as well. People want, I suppose, that connection with someone who's like them, who's real, who's genuine. So actually, you putting your story out there, and there's stepping stones to be able to do that. Do some things that are pre-recorded first. I've just found an amazing app called Teleprompter, which if you're recording something, it streams all the content, all the text onto your phone. So that's a great way to do a 1-minute video. You've got the text in front of you, and yeah, just start doing it. Show your friends first. And actually that can be the hardest bit. So getting over that hurdle, and then just put bits out. Also, what I did was really start looking at the news. I mean, I don't like watching the news because it's so negative, but they make mistakes all the time. They stumble over words, something goes wrong. So once you start looking at people presenting live, you start to see it doesn't matter if you make a mistake. People won't remember. So it doesn't have to be perfection either.
Someone has asked actually, and I think this might be an interesting, because I wanted to ask you a little bit more about retailers. Valerie's asked, what if you are the retailer yourself, a multi-brand retailer? What advice would you have for them, particularly in the current environment? I mean, obviously we need a physical space. I don't know if Valerie, if you have a little more detail you can add to that question, but it's quite a
broad question. Advice in general, I suppose I would say, what is your point of difference?
Oh, it's an e-commerce platform. Okay,
but still, I suppose, yeah. What's your point of difference? Who's your customer and how do you connect with them? Why should they shop with you over another brand, or another retailer? So if you're curating an edit of products, you need to have a tone of voice, you need to have a reason, you need to have your own unique selling points, so you can connect with a customer.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Valerie, I hope that answers. Okay, we've had another one here. Lisa's asked, you mentioned the marketing rule of 7. What is that?
Yeah. So it's a number of times people need to see your brand before they purchase it. So it is a minimum of 7 times before of seeing your brand in different places before they consider purchasing it, which is kind of something that's been around for a very long time. I mean, and there's horror stories now that it's a lot higher than 7 because we are so inundated with content and our minds are just flicking between things all the time and constant scrolling. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to say the numbers I've seen. I've just seen someone said online. No. But yeah, I've seen higher. But
I'm really sorry, my connection just completely dropped out when you in the past 2 minutes. What was your last point? Sorry.
We were just talking about the marketing rule of 7, and people need to see your brand at least 7 times before they purchase. So have a think about all those different touch points where you could connect with them.
Okay, brilliant. Right, I think we touched on this earlier, but I wanted to ask you in terms of, obviously you have amazing experience of getting brands into retailers. Do you have kind of a key piece of advice for a brand looking to work with retailers? And that may not be at the moment, but maybe this is the time to be having those conversations and anticipating when things do return to some level of normality. I mean, I'm sure that you had approaches when you were working in-house at Selfridges. You know, what really stood out for you? What would make you pay attention to a brand that was pitching to you?
Yeah, it's demonstrating your point of difference. So it's not just the point of difference that you think you have. Make sure you've researched the brands that they already stock, and make sure you can know where your brand fits in alongside those. Also ask other people, do you think this is different enough? Get some, I suppose, some opinions from other people as well. Tailor your pitch pack to each retailer. Do not send a generic approach, because if you get a group WhatsApp, do you reply? Generally not. Make sure it's accountable, it's to that person, and you're telling them why it's right for their store. And make sure you prove your commercial value as well. So it's not just about why your product is amazing, why it's different. Give the indication of why your brand is scaling, and what the opportunity is in their store. So I get asked a lot of questions about this, but I've got some new training coming up on this one, which will be ready in about a week or 2. So if people sign up to my emailing list, it will go out to there first of all. So
Brilliant. And do you cover things like, because I see there are questions coming in about what you should include in a pitch pack. Does that all, would you cover all of that? Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, I've got a free training, and then I actually have an online program as well, which I've created because I get millions of questions like this. Lots of them very much the same. It's got an exact pitch framework of exactly what to put in and why, what the financial expectations are, what buyers look for, how to find out the buyer's name. So a kind of a guide of exactly what to do.
And is it as daunting as everybody thinks it is?
And I find this kind of quite soul destroying, and this is why I've created this program as well, because it can be a real point where people lose confidence in their brand. Launching with retailers is a long-term strategy, and you might not hear back straight away, and that's okay. So it's not a reflection on you, and it's not a reflection on your brand. Buyers get hundreds of emails a day. They're managing hundreds of suppliers. Just to meet with those suppliers twice a year, they have is a huge amount of time, as well as trading the business. So it's not a rejection. It's not, the brand isn't right for their store, their customer at that time. So you can revisit and approach them again, but you need to be sending them an update and need to be sending them something different. So you need to start thinking about, if you want to be approaching retailers and be stocked in them in the second half of this year, you need to make sure you're pitching to them in March, April time. So it's a long-term strategy. And if you want to be in a retailer's kind of this time next year, then you need to make sure that you've got a pitch to them kind of September time. But do your research. Lots of people don't get responses because it's the same thing sent to everybody, and I used to see that over and over again. People hadn't bothered to find out my name. People copy and pasted an email with the wrong retailer in. The email was excessively long. The pitch pack was so long that it was just too much information for me to understand what this brand actually did. So actually sometimes less is more in a pitch pack. It's not about overloading them with information, because a buyer will be reviewing that pitch pack in probably less than 30 seconds. Because they don't have much time. They're really, really time poor.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful. Because I think pitching to retailers is probably up there with securing investment. A brand, it's as cutthroat, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's the rejection thing. It's really hard. I see lots of brands really question what they're doing. But be prepared that you won't hear back necessarily, and if you do, great. So don't go in there thinking, and it also makes people not do it for that reason. So
okay, thank you.
Go for it.
Obviously 2020 was a very challenging year, and 2021 doesn't look set to be that different. I mean, obviously there's change on the way, but it's going to take time. What are your thoughts on the pressure that businesses are facing to pivot? Because I know everybody keeps saying, oh, we need to pivot, but I know that can also just freeze people. Because they think, well, I don't know what else I could do. What else can I do? How can I make? I mean, what advice do you have to a brand that's feeling like that right now?
Just try some new things. I think we have to. If we're standing still, we can't wait to see what's going to happen. I think lots of brands might have been waiting. Some of them have been doing lots and have tried things and starting to learn what's working and what's not. But actually changing things up isn't, I mean, we're entrepreneurs, like that's what we do. You have to try things, you have to fail. And from everything that doesn't work, you will have learned something. So yeah, try some new things.
Because a lot of the really successful brands out there, what they offer or their key kind of their hero product isn't necessarily what they started their journey with.
No, and actually, I think people are really worried what people will think. But actually, if something's a flop, people won't remember. And if they do, it means they love your brand. So brilliant. Often you will remember, but other people won't.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we've got just a few minutes left for questions because we ask some of them as we go along. So if you do have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. But we've got one here from Sally who's asking, what innovations do you think retailers will be doing in the next few years? And how can brands respond to that? So that's a bit of a forecast, I guess, on what you think the landscape is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about experience, and we've seen the demise of the stores that haven't been offering experience. So physical retail will become more and more theatrical. It'll be more about experience. I think the retailers that will be winning are the ones that don't focus separately on physical and digital. And unfortunately, a lot of retailers still do. They still look at them as separate kind of P&Ls, which I think can be so challenging, because actually it's so much more holistic than that. It's about building customer engagement and customer trust with the retailer's brand name, essentially. And then, of course, digital. I think the digital retailers that have really invested in the back-end infrastructure. So how do they have amazing ease of purchase? What is their delivery proposition? Again, they are really competing with Amazon. So why should that customer shop with that retailer? And then it's making things really easy to find on their website as well. So what's the customer journey? What's the navigation? And I always talk to brands, and I think for any of you to take this away actually, is what do you have on your product page? I see a lot of retailers that you get, and with brands actually, you get to the product page and it doesn't tell me anything. It's like, here's the product, here's the price, might have the ingredients, and that's it. But that customer's got all of that way to that where they're about to purchase, but they can't find out any more information. So how is it linked to blogs? How do you integrate videos? How do you have reviews on there? How do you make that really, really rich on that product page? And I think that's really missed. And I think retailers that are really thinking about, I suppose, a hybrid of digital and physical customer experience. So there's lots of, I suppose, digital customer experiences with customer service, but actually it's having a bit of a hybrid there of kind of a real person on the end of that digital experience as well.
And what impact have the last 12 months had on how people are buying and what they're buying?
I think people are really consciously thinking about what they're buying and who from and why. And I think there's been a lot of talk about ethical brands and sustainability, but are people, I suppose, really purchasing in the masses there yet? But I think people are really thinking about who they're spending their money with. People are thinking about their own income and money. So people are thinking about what brands they buy from as well. I think shopping local, shopping small, and it's really, I think, an asset for brands now. And people don't necessarily want to be giving the big guys loads of money.
Rachel's, Lisa's actually asked a question. What are the upcoming trends for the beauty industry?
Wellness is absolutely massive. So how does your brand make people feel? How can you align to kind of any wellness and self-care if your brand is relevant to that? Or if not, can you collaborate with some people that are in that wellness space? Skincare is obviously hugely on the rise, with lots of people looking after their skin at home rather than necessarily going for facials. The bath and body category has seen a massive growth as well. Lots of people trying to have these kind of small timeouts at home if they've kind of been busy all day or they can't necessarily get out. So there are certainly some key trends that are coming, or here already actually. And aromatherapy is a big one as well. That a lot of people are starting to understand the power of nature, and also I think the East meets West philosophies is a huge one, and is really bubbling away. There's a few brands out there that are inspired by the East, but I think this is a massive one. So many people have embraced yoga. So many people have got Calm and Headspace apps, and people are really starting to understand that beauty is more than skin deep, I suppose. It's all coming from the inside, really. If you've got acne, it's probably because something's happening inside and it's stress.
Yeah. Rachel, and I know someone else has endorsed that this is a really great question. Amazon Premium Beauty, what are your thoughts on the cons?
Well, they haven't cracked it yet. This is an interesting topic, and I sway actually on Amazon, because when I was a buyer at Selfridges, if you're on Amazon, it was like a no, we're not going to stock you. But actually, I think Amazon, although, yeah, I mean, Jeff's got a lot of money, hasn't he? And do we want to be giving him loads more money? I think it has actually been an amazing platform for brands to be able to very quickly get their brand out there this year. And I think a lot of people trust, they don't want to be giving their payment details to lots of different companies. So from a security point of view, a lot of people will be happy to purchase something from Amazon, but not necessarily from brands' websites. So I think that's also, they obviously do Amazon Pay now, kind of to rival PayPal, which you can integrate into your websites. But yeah, the luxury beauty, they haven't cracked that. I mean, they've been trying for a long time, but it's scaling very, very slowly. And all of the big brands have huge legal contracts to protect themselves against going on Amazon, like 50, 100-page contracts. So any retailers have to jump through hoops to be able to get some of the big corporates because of these contracts, because they're not going on Amazon anytime soon. So I suppose Amazon Luxury Beauty will have some brands, but they won't have the big guys, not for a long time.
Could that be an advantage then for fledgling brands or those wanting to get exposure and brand awareness?
Yeah, it can be, although then it's expensive to be on Amazon Luxury Beauty as well. Yes, you can be stocked there, but how do you get visibility? So then there's the marketing that you need to pay, the marketing options that you need to contribute to get visibility as well.
Well, and I guess it's kind of closing the circle as well, getting your customers and your community searching for you. And
yeah.
So if they're buying you through Amazon, it's because it's for ease or the reliability of the delivery or fast turnaround, etc.
And also Amazon is very different to other retailers. It's not based, people don't search brands on there, they search product. So if people will search for a phone cable or they'll search for a sea salt body scrub. They won't search for a brand name unless you're a big brand name. So there's still a lot of brand building to do to be discovered on Amazon, unless you have something that actually is really niche. So I work with a brand that supplements. He's got a supplement called NMN, which no one else is really doing. So he's huge on Amazon because people are searching for that.
Ah, brilliant. Okay. Lamorna's asked a question here about what do you think about the longer term trend of brands becoming less reliant on social media, signaled by brands like Bottega Veneta coming off their social channels?
I don't think we're there yet. I think it's quite a bold move. I think people are, I mean, look at the stats, people are still using social media. I think you might be cutting your nose off to spite your face for quite a long time. And there's lots of new ways, there's lots of new things coming up as well. I mean, look at Clubhouse, which I got into yesterday, woohoo. So if you don't know what Clubhouse is, it's the new social media platform that's going to be, pretty big apparently. But they've made it quite exclusive and it's only to get in if you know somebody else that's on the platform. So yeah, and if you've seen it with things like TikTok, that suddenly people can grow an audience really, really quickly. So actually new things keep coming along as well, although things like Instagram and Facebook have really slowed down and it's hard to get traction there unless you do advertising. There's these new ones that pop up as well. So I always encourage indie brands to be able to try out some of these new things, if it's their customer demographic, of course, because if you're targeting 40-year-olds, you don't want to be going on TikTok.
Yeah, although I know lots of 40-year-olds that watch fall down video holes on TikTok.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure it's where they're purchasing there.
Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely. Okay, well, does anyone else, because I think we're at time now, but we could possibly squeeze in one more question if anyone wants to pop another question to the chat, or Wiz, if there's kind of something you wanted to round off with or finish in conclusion.
Just if anybody wants to get in touch with me, follow me on Instagram and connect with me on LinkedIn. So yeah, Wizz Selvey and WIZZ&CO. And I have lots of previous masterclasses actually on my website. So if you want to get some more content like this, you can head over there. And I suppose for those who had questions about retailers, there is also a masterclass on the events page about 6 things that buyers look for. And there's some new content coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Brilliant, thank you. And as I said in the beginning, Wiz has very kindly put together 5 key takeaways from this session, which I'll share with you in a follow-up email, along with her contact details and a link to her website so that you can engage with her. separately. Thank you so much for your time today. We just had Sam say here in the chat, I'm a best-selling Irish crime writer wanting to crack the UK, and I just got my first review in the Daily Mail, so very many
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you, Wiz. So I'm really glad there's been some lovely comments in here. And I know someone else also said here, in terms of visibility for your business, feel free, everyone, if you would like to, pop a URL for your companies, for your products or your services in the chat, and I'll download that and share that with everyone as part of the roundup as well, so that you can let everybody know that you're out there and they can check you out. And feel free, if you've got the time as well, please, everyone, follow those companies on your social platforms and show them a little bit of love. It's how we can all help each other, and create some awareness within our community. And hopefully everybody will give you a follow as well. I'll include all the links to your platforms as well, Wiz.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for all coming.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope we'll see you all next week for our next event. We've got one on how to turn your fears to fierce with Britta Fernandez-Schmidt, who's the executive director of Women for Women International, and also the author of a new book. So hopefully many of you can join us for that. Wiz, thank you so much, and I'll be in touch as part of the follow-up. Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.